solitude's guardian. Nora Vega preferred the graveyard shift for 3 reasons: the silence, the solitude, and the stars. At 0300 hours, Polaris Station's observation deck offered an unobstructed view of Vega Prime, a massive blue-white star that humanity had designated as the centerpiece for their next terraforming project. The star burned with such intensity that the deck's polarized windows automatically darkened to protect human retinas. Nora adjusted the calibration settings on the solar monitoring array, her fingers moving with practiced precision despite the late hour. The terraforming project required exact measurements of Vega Prime's radiation output, calculations that would determine whether the 4th planet in the system could sustain Earth vegetation after atmospheric modification. Logging solar variance at 0.4%, she muttered to the empty room. Within acceptable parameters. The computer chirped acknowledgement as Nora stretched her tall frame, casting a long shadow across the polished floor. For years at Polaris Station, and she still found it easier to talk to machines than people. Machines didn't ask questions about her past. They didn't wonder why one of Earth's most promising solar engineers had exiled herself to a remote research station at the edge of explored space. Her comm unit buzzed. "Vega, you still awake up there?" "Dar." Larson's voice crackled through the speaker. "Affirmative," Nora replied, keeping her tone neutral. Larson was one of the few scientists who didn't treat her like a ghost haunting the station. "Thought you'd want to know the delegation from the Unity Alliance arrives tomorrow. Director wants all senior specialists present for the welcome ceremony at 0900. Nora frowned. "I'm not a senior specialist." "No, but you're the only one who understands the solar array well enough to explain it to our visitors," Larson said. "Some of these species have technology we've never seen. Direct knowledge exchange, that's the whole point of this program. I'll prepare a data packet they can review at their leisure." Larson's sigh was audible through the comm. "Nora, you can't avoid people forever. At some point. My shift ends at 0600, Nora interrupted. "I'll send the materials to your terminal before I clock out." A pause. "Fine. One day you're going to have to." Nora switched off the comm unit. The silence returned, comforting in its completeness. She turned back to the viewport where Vega Prime blazed against the black canvas of space. Stars didn't judge. Stars didn't pry. Stars just burned, constant and predictable, their fusion reactions following immutable physical laws. Unlike people. Unlike Marcus with his promises and betrayals. Unlike the other test subjects with their screams as the experiment collapsed into catastrophe. Nora forced the memories down and focused on the star. 3 more hours until her shift ended. 3 more hours of blessed solitude. The delegation's arrival generated exactly the kind of chaos Nora had hoped to avoid. Polaris Station's main docking bay transformed overnight from a utilitarian loading zone into a diplomatic reception area, complete with Earth flags alongside banners representing the Unity Alliance worlds. Scientists who normally wore stained lab coats suddenly appeared in pressed uniforms, forming neat rows as the transport ship completed its docking procedure. Nora lurked at the back, having found the least conspicuous position behind a pillar that partially concealed her 5 feet 11 inches frame. She'd managed to avoid the welcome ceremony by claiming a critical calibration run, but Director Hawthorne had personally ordered her to attend the evening reception. "There you are," Dr. Larson said, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of something purple and bubbling. She handed one to Nora. "Thought you might need this." "What is it?" Nora eyed the liquid suspiciously. "Liquid courage," Larson said with a smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. At 58, she'd earned every one of her laugh lines. "Just try not to scowl at our guests. Some species interpret it as a challenge to combat." Nora took a reluctant sip. The liquid tasted of berries and burned going down. "How many delegates?" 14 species, 30 individuals total. Most of them scientists like us, a few diplomats. Larson nodded toward a group of amphibious-looking beings with translucent skin. The Neridians brought their water engineers. Thought they might have some insights for the terraforming project. Nora's gaze moved across the room, cataloging the various aliens with detached interest. A pair of insectoid Vazari chittered near the buffet. 3 furry Canari huddled together, their 6 eyes sweeping the room nervously. A tall, willowy being with bark-like skin stood alone, photosynthetic fronds waving gently above its head. "Where are the Lumidari?" Larson asked, scanning the crowd. "They were specifically interested in our solar engineering division." "The what?" Nora's attention snapped back to Larson. "Lumidari, from a tidally locked planet called Nixus. They live on the dark side, developed some impressive technology for surviving without direct sunlight." Larson sipped her drink. "Their representative specifically requested information about your work on solar energy conversion." A cold weight settled in Nora's stomach. "I wasn't briefed on this." "Maybe if you attended staff meetings once in a while," Larson began, but her words were cut short by a blaring alarm that sent everyone in the room into immediate alert. Red alert. Solar flare detected. Radiation shields engaging. All personnel clear observation areas immediately. The crowd erupted into controlled chaos as station security began directing guests toward designated shelter areas. Nora's training kicked in instantly. She dropped her glass and pushed through the crowd toward the nearest monitoring terminal. "What's happening?" she demanded of the technician whose fingers flew across the controls. "Massive solar prominence," the technician replied without looking up. "Broke from Vega Prime's surface 15 minutes ago, heading straight for us. Shields will hold, but the observation deck." "Was anyone up there?" Nora interrupted. The technician glanced at a personnel location schematic. "One life sign in observation pod B, non-human biosignature." Nora was moving before the technician finished speaking. She sprinted through the station's corridors, ignoring Larson's shouts behind her. The observation deck consisted of several pods extending outward from the station's main hull, each offering specialized viewing angles of Vega Prime and the surrounding planetary system. Pod B had the least shielding, designed primarily for deep space observation away from the star. If the flare hit while someone was in there, the lift to the observation level seemed painfully slow. When the doors finally opened, emergency lights pulsed red throughout the corridor. The radiation warning indicators near Pod B glowed an angry orange, not immediately lethal, but dangerous with prolonged exposure. Nora punched the emergency override code into the pod's door panel. Nothing happened. She tried again, swearing under her breath. "System override authorization Vega Delta 42, she barked at the panel. The computer beeped acknowledgement, and the door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. A wave of heat struck her as she entered Pod B. The radiation shields had partially deployed, but not before Vega Prime's flare had penetrated the viewing panels. Emergency shutters now covered the windows, but the damage was done. The pod's interior glowed with residual radiation that the ventilation system was struggling to clear. At first, Nora saw nothing. Then a soft moan drew her attention to the far corner, where a crumpled form lay half-hidden beneath a monitoring console. She approached cautiously, the radiation detector on her wrist chirping warning signals as she drew closer. She made out a distinctly male shape, humanoid but clearly alien. His skin was a deep indigo color, but parts of it had turned an ashen gray that flaked away like burning paper. Where the radiation had struck directly, his flesh had cracked open, revealing a silvery subcutaneous layer that seemed to be evaporating. "Medical emergency in observation Pod B," Nora called into her comm unit. "Need immediate assistance for radiation burns on a non-human subject." The alien's eyes flew open, startling silver irises that seemed to glow from within. He tried to speak but only managed a rasping sound as more of his skin cracked and peeled away. Something in Nora's mind clicked. Lumidari. He was the Lumidari delegate Larson had mentioned. Living on a planet's dark side would make him especially vulnerable to direct star radiation. Acting on instinct, she knelt beside him and carefully lifted him into a sitting position. His body felt unnaturally hot, as though burning from the inside out. He cried out when her hands touched the damaged areas of his skin. "I'm sorry," she said. "Help is coming. I'm going to move you out of this pod, somewhere safer." As she shifted her grip to lift him, something extraordinary happened. Where her palm pressed against an area of cracked indigo skin on his arm, the damage visibly reversed. The flaking stopped, the cracks sealed themselves, and the ashen gray color faded, replaced by healthy indigo. The Lumidari noticed too. His silver eyes widened, fixing on her hand with naked surprise. "That's impossible," he whispered, his voice accented but perfectly understandable. Nora stared at the healed patch of skin, then at her own hand. "I didn't do anything." "You did," his voice grew stronger. He deliberately placed her hand on another damaged area of his forearm. Immediately, the healing process repeated, cracked skin mending before their eyes. The emergency medical team arrived then, led by Dr. Larson herself. They stopped short at the pod entrance, taking in the scene with professional assessment. "What happened?" Larson demanded, approaching with a medical scanner. "Solar flare radiation." "He was exposed," Nora explained, still holding the alien's arm. "But something's happening when I touch him. The damage is reversing." Larson ran her scanner over both of them, frowning at the readings. "That's not possible." The Lumidari's silver eyes hadn't left Nora's face. "I am Theron," he said, his tone formal despite his condition. "And you have just saved my life in a way that defies everything I know about human and Lumidari biology." Larson's scanner beeped insistently. "We need to get him to medical immediately. The radiation damage is extensive." Nora moved to lift Theron completely, but he gripped her wrist with surprising strength. "Don't let go," he said, his silver eyes intense. "Whatever you're doing, it stops when you break contact." The medical bay erupted into scientific chaos as soon as Nora carried Theron through the doors. Dar. Wei Jinhai, Polaris Station's lead xenobiologist, practically pounced on them with scanners and sample collection tools, his excitement barely contained by professional decorum. "Set him down here," Wei directed, pointing to an examination bed. "Maintain physical contact if that's what's causing the healing effect." Nora carefully placed Theron on the bed but kept her hand on his arm as instructed. The medical team swarmed around them, setting up monitoring equipment and taking readings. Theron remained remarkably composed despite being the center of such intense scrutiny. "How exactly did you discover this effect?" Wei asked, carefully taking a skin sample from Theron's arm just beyond where Nora's fingers touched. "I touched him while trying to help," Nora said simply. Theron's lips curved into what might have been a smile. "She cradled me quite heroically." Something in his tone made Nora's ears warm. She focused on the monitoring equipment instead of his face. "The cellular regeneration is remarkable," Wei murmured, examining a microscopic view of Theron's tissue. "His cells are repairing at 40 times normal rate, but only in proximity to Ms. Vega's contact point." Director Hawthorne arrived, bringing with him the Unity Alliance's medical liaison, a tall, spindly being with 4 arms and eyes that rotated independently. "Report," Hawthorne demanded, his bushy eyebrows drawn together. "Dar." Wei explained the situation while Nora maintained contact with Theron's arm, acutely aware of the strange warmth radiating from his indigo skin. "It appears Ms. Vega's touch triggers an unprecedented cellular regeneration response in the Lumidari physiology," Wei concluded. "We've never documented anything like it." Hawthorne's gaze shifted to Nora, his expression unreadable. "Is there something about your physiology I should know about, Vega?" A loaded question. Nora kept her face neutral. "Not that I'm aware of, sir." Hawthorne clearly didn't believe her. "Dr. Wei, I want complete biometric scans of both subjects. Alliance protocols require full disclosure of any unexpected biological interactions." The Alliance medical liaison bobbed its elongated head. Most fascinating. We must determine if this effect is specific to this human Lumidari pairing or if it can be replicated. Theron shifted on the examination bed, his silver eyes narrowing. I am not a laboratory specimen to be prodded at your convenience. Of course not, Wei said soothingly. But we need to understand. Test your theory, Theron interrupted. Have another human touch me where the radiation damage is worst. Wei hesitated, then nodded to a nearby technician, a young woman named Patel. She stepped forward and gingerly placed her hand on Theron's shoulder, where the indigo skin was still cracked and ashen. Nothing happened. Try another, Theron suggested, his tone now almost smug. 3 more humans attempted contact with identical non-results. The damaged skin remained damaged. It appears this interaction is unique to Ms. Vega, Wei concluded, poorly concealing his scientific excitement. Theron's gaze returned to Nora, studying her with newfound intensity. How fortunate that you were the one who found me. Let's not jump to conclusions, Hawthorne cautioned. We need controlled testing. Dar. Wei, set up a proper protocol. With respect, Director, Theron interrupted again, sitting up straighter. My body is still experiencing significant cellular damage according to your scanners. Before becoming your research project, I would prefer to complete my healing. His directness startled the humans in the room. Alliance species tended toward excessive diplomacy in their communications. What do you propose? Hawthorne asked after a moment. Theron turned to Nora. We need skin-to-skin contact to maximize the healing effect and measure the reaction rate properly, he stated with clinical precision, but Nora didn't miss the subtle curl at the corner of his mouth. The more contact surface area, the faster the cellular regeneration. Nora cleared her throat. Meaning? Meaning, Theron said, holding her gaze with those unsettling silver eyes, that holding my arm is inefficient. We need to optimize our approach. Dar. Wei adjusted his glasses, clearly intrigued. The data does suggest a correlation between contact area and regeneration speed. I volunteer Ms. Vega as my primary healing contact, Theron announced, as if Nora had no say in the matter. We will need privacy to conduct proper baseline tests. Now wait a minute, Hawthorne began. I accept, Nora said, surprising herself. Something about this alien's directness cut through the fog of isolation she'd wrapped around herself for 4 years. That, and genuine scientific curiosity about what was happening between them. Theron's lips curved into a genuine smile. Excellent. As they locked eyes, Nora felt the familiar weight of secrets shifting within her. For the first time in years, she wondered if perhaps she'd found someone who might understand what it meant to be irrevocably changed by forces beyond one's control, someone who might help her understand the terrible gift she'd been burdened with since the accident that had claimed so many lives. Resonance across worlds. You didn't have to agree to this, Dr. Larson told Nora as they walked toward the guest quarters where Theron had been assigned. Wei and Hawthorne got carried away with the scientific implications, but you're not obligated to be his personal healing touch. Nora adjusted the monitoring bracelet Wei had insisted she wear. It would track her vital signs during contact with Theron and transmit the data to the medical bay. I'm curious, she admitted. This shouldn't be possible. Human and alien physiologies don't just synchronize like this. That's what interests me, Larson said thoughtfully. Your medical records don't show anything unusual. Not the medical records Polaris Station had access to, anyway. Nora kept that thought to herself. They reached Theron's quarters. The door slid open before Nora could announce their presence, revealing Theron dressed in a simple silver tunic that complemented his indigo skin. The damaged areas were still visible, patches of ashen gray and cracked purple across his shoulders and along one side of his face. Dr. Larson, Theron acknowledged with a nod. I appreciate the escort, but I believe Ms. Vega and I can handle things from here. Larson raised an eyebrow. Protocol requires a medical observer for first contact physiological interactions. And I require privacy for my healing, Theron countered smoothly. Alliance Treaty Section 12, Paragraph 4, member species shall be granted autonomy in medical treatment choices when on foreign stations. His silver eyes glinted. I've studied your agreements quite thoroughly. Larson looked like she wanted to argue but finally sighed. The monitoring bracelets will record everything. If either of your vital signs show distress, medical will intervene. Understood? Good, Theron said, stepping aside to let Nora enter. When the door closed behind them, Nora found herself suddenly very aware of the small private space. Theron's quarters had been customized for Lumidari comfort, the lighting dimmed to a soft amber glow that barely illuminated the room. Your people prefer darkness, Nora observed, giving herself a moment to adjust. We evolved on the dark side of a tidally locked planet, Theron confirmed. He moved to a seating area and gracefully lowered himself onto a cushioned bench. Bright light damages our photosensitive skin. Even your station's standard lighting is uncomfortable for extended periods. Nora remained standing, uncertain how to proceed. How should we start? Theron looked amused. You humans and your awkwardness about physical contact. On Nixus, touch is both medicinal and communicative. He patted the space beside him. Sit. Place your hands where the damage is worst. Hesitantly, Nora sat beside him and gently placed her palm against the side of his face where the skin was cracked and gray. The contact sent an odd tingling sensation up her arm, not unpleasant, but definitely unusual. Theron closed his eyes, a small sigh escaping his lips. Better already. Nora watched in fascination as the damaged skin beneath her palm began to heal, the healthy indigo color spreading outward from her touch like ripples in water. Does it hurt? She asked. The healing process. Quite the opposite, Theron murmured, his eyes still closed. It feels like warmth flowing into cold places. He placed his own hand over hers, pressing it more firmly against his cheek. How did you end up on this station, Nora Vega? Your file says you were a prominent solar engineer on Earth. The personal question caught her off guard. I wanted solitude. Theron opened his eyes, studying her. No one wants solitude. They may need it, but that's different. He guided her other hand to his shoulder, where more damaged skin awaited healing. Your touch resonates at the cellular level. That suggests compatibility beyond the physical. You're very direct, Nora observed, trying to maintain scientific detachment as she felt his skin regenerating beneath her fingers. Life is too brief for indirectness, Theron replied. Especially for my people. Our genetic modifications gave us the ability to survive in darkness but shortened our lifespans considerably. A shadow passed over his features. We pay for every adaptation. Something in his words struck a chord with Nora. She knew about paying for adaptation all too well. The monitoring bracelet chirped, analyzing the healing progress. Theron glanced at it with mild annoyance. These tests would proceed more efficiently with greater contact area, he said matter-of-factly. Before Nora could respond, he shifted position and took her hands, placing them on either side of his waist where the silver tunic left his sides exposed. Much better. Nora swallowed hard, feeling the smooth warmth of his skin beneath her palms. Is this necessary? Completely. Theron's silver eyes held a glint of something that might have been amusement or might have been challenge. Does my directness make you uncomfortable, solar engineer? I'm just not used to it, Nora admitted. For years of minimal human contact does that to a person. Then we're both experiencing something new. Theron leaned slightly closer. Your species fascinates me. So fragile compared to many alliance races, yet so adaptable. His gaze sharpened. Some more adaptable than others, it seems. There was a knowing quality to his assessment that made Nora want to pull her hands away, but the visible healing taking place beneath her touch kept her still. What happened to you, Nora Vega? he asked softly. What are you hiding from out here at the edge of explored space? I'm not hiding, she said automatically. Theron's laugh was musical and utterly disbelieving. Everyone hides something. I'm hiding several things myself. He placed one of his hands over hers, the indigo fingers surprisingly strong. But secrets have weight. Carry too many for too long, and they'll crush you. The monitoring bracelet beeped again, this time with a different tone. Nora glanced down at it. Your cellular regeneration is accelerating, she noted, grateful for the chance to change subjects. Almost twice the initial rate now. As I predicted, Theron said, sounding pleased. The emotional connection enhances the physical response. We don't have an emotional connection. Don't we? He tilted his head. Your heart rate increased by 12% when I touched your hand. Your pupils dilated. Small physiological tells, but significant. His smile was knowing. Humans are wonderfully transparent. Before Nora could form a response, the room's communication panel chimed. Ms. Vega, Director Hawthorne's voice filled the room. I need to see you in my office immediately. Theron frowned. We're in the middle of an important healing session. This takes precedence, Hawthorne replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. It concerns Ms. Vega's previous work history. A cold weight settled in Nora's stomach. She stood up abruptly, her hands falling away from Theron's now mostly healed skin. I'll be right there, sir, she said, keeping her voice steady. Theron caught her wrist as she turned to leave. This isn't finished, he said, and Nora wasn't sure if he meant the healing or the conversation. I'll come back when I can, she promised. His silver eyes held hers for a moment longer. I'll be waiting, Nora Vega. And I'm very, very patient. Director Hawthorne's office offered a panoramic view of Vega Prime, though the polarized windows had darkened to their maximum setting after the recent solar flare. The man himself stood with his back to the door when Nora entered, his hands clasped behind him as he gazed out at the massive star. You didn't disclose your full history when you applied for this position, Hawthorne said without turning around. Nora remained near the door. My qualifications were verified by Earth Central. Yes, they were. Hawthorne finally turned, fixing Nora with a penetrating stare. What they failed to mention was your participation in Project Prometheus. The name sent a jolt through Nora's system. No one was supposed to know about Prometheus. The entire project had been classified at the highest levels after the accident. I don't know what you're talking about, Nora said carefully. Hawthorne's laugh was short and without humor. Save it, Vega. I received a priority communication from Earth Central after our Lumidari guest's unusual reaction to you. They're very interested in what's happening here. He tossed a data pad onto his desk. You're the only surviving test subject from Prometheus, the only human ever to successfully integrate photonic energy conversion into cellular structure. Nora said nothing, her mind racing through possible responses, possible escapes. What I want to know, Hawthorne continued, is whether what happened with the Lumidari was a coincidence or if you knew this would happen. It was coincidence, Nora said firmly. I had no idea my condition would affect him that way. Hawthorne studied her for a long moment. Earth Central is sending a specialist team. They want to study both of you. Apparently, the implications for human-alien hybrid technology are significant. Study us? Nora felt a surge of protective anger that surprised her with its intensity. Theron isn't some lab specimen. Neither were you, once, Hawthorne pointed out. Yet here we are. He sat down behind his desk. The Lumidari modified themselves genetically to survive in darkness. You were modified to process solar radiation at unprecedented levels. The synchronicity is too perfect to ignore. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you what's going to happen. Hawthorne's expression hardened. You will continue your healing sessions with the Lumidari under observed conditions. You will submit to whatever tests Earth Central deems necessary, and you will do it without complaint, or I'll have you shipped back to Earth on the next transport for breach of contract. Nora's hands clenched at her sides. And Theron? Alliance treaties protect him from forced experimentation, Hawthorne admitted, but he seems quite willing to participate, especially with you involved. Something in the director's tone made Nora's skin crawl. Is that all, sir? For now. Hawthorne turned back to the window. The specialist team arrives in 3 days. I suggest you use that time to prepare the Lumidari for what's coming. Dismissed. Nora left the office with her mind in turmoil. The walls of Polaris Station suddenly felt like a prison. For years of careful anonymity, of burying her past, all undone because she happened to touch an alien man during a solar flare emergency. She made her way back to Theron's quarters, needing to warn him but unsure exactly what to say. When his door slid open, he was standing in the center of the room, his silver tunic replaced by a more elaborate garment that left his shoulders and arms bare. The previously damaged skin now glowed with healthy indigo coloration. You look troubled, he observed, gesturing her inside. We need to talk, Nora said, the door sliding shut behind him. Theron moved closer, his silver eyes studying her face. About your past. About Project Prometheus. Nora froze. How do you know about that? Because that's why I'm here, Nora Vega, Theron finished for her. He placed a hand on her chest, directly over her heart. I came to find you, the last surviving solar-modified human in the galaxy. Why? She managed. His touch was sending that now familiar tingling through her body. Because the darkness is killing me, he whispered. And I believe only your touch can save my life. He took her hand and placed it over his heart. Through the thin material of his garment, Nora could feel the rapid beating, faster than a human heart, vibrating with an energy that seemed to call to something deep within her modified cells. There's something different about you, Nora Vega, he said softly, his silver eyes luminescent in the dim light. And I intend to discover exactly what it is. Nora stared at Theron, his words echoing in her mind. He knew about Project Prometheus. Not just knew, he had come to Polaris Station specifically to find her, the last surviving solar-modified human in the galaxy. How? She finally managed, pulling her hand away from his heart. That project was classified beyond top secret. The records were destroyed after the accident. Theron's silver eyes tracked her movement, unblinking. Your government is not as secure with its secrets as it believes. Information leaks, especially to those desperate enough to seek it out. He took a step closer. And my people are very desperate. What exactly do you think I can do for you? Her voice hardened. I'm not some miracle cure. I'm a failed experiment that should have died with the others. Yet you didn't die, Theron's head tilted slightly, studying her. Why is that, I wonder? Out of 14 test subjects, only you survived the solar integration process. Nora turned away, memories flashing through her mind, the screams, the smell of burning flesh, Marcus's face contorted in agony as his cells failed to stabilize the solar energy pouring into them. It was random chance, she said flatly. A mutation in my cellular structure that the screening process missed. There's no such thing as random chance at that level, Theron countered, moving to stand in front of her again. Your body adapted because it was meant to. Now you sound like Dr. Reinhardt. He called it evolutionary destiny right before half the lab exploded. Nora's laugh held no humor. Look, whatever you came here hoping to find, I can't help you. I can barely help myself. Theron's expression softened. Yet you helped me without hesitation. Your first instinct upon finding me was to save me, not study me. He reached for her hand again, and despite herself, Nora let him take it. That suggests you're more than the broken experiment you believe yourself to be. The warmth of his touch sent that now familiar tingle up her arm. Nora felt the energy within her respond, reaching out to him on a cellular level she couldn't control. Hawthorne knows, she said abruptly. About Prometheus. About me. Earth Central is sending a team to study us both. Theron's fingers tightened around hers. How soon? 3 days. He cursed in what Nora assumed was his native language. Sooner than I expected. We'll need to accelerate our testing, then. Our testing? You still want to continue after what I just told you? Now more than ever. Theron's determination was unmistakable. 3 days is enough time to establish baseline parameters for your energy transference capabilities. Nora pulled her hand free. I'm not transferring energy to you. I can't. The process doesn't work that way. But it does, Theron insisted. I've analyzed the cellular samples Dr. Wei collected. When we touch, your modified cells emit a specific radiation frequency that my cells absorb and use to repair solar damage. His voice took on a hint of excitement. It's like nothing documented in any Alliance medical database. So I'm just a battery to you. Nora felt a stab of disappointment that surprised her with its intensity. Theron's eyes widened. Is that what you think? He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his indigo skin. If all I wanted was a power source, I could have requested samples of your tissue. I wouldn't need, he gestured between them, this. Then what do you need? Theron's silver eyes held hers. A partner. The next morning, Nora found herself in the main laboratory, electrodes attached to her temples and chest while Dr. Wei monitored her neural patterns. Across the room, Theron sat in a similar arrangement, his indigo skin glowing faintly under the lab's dim lights. Remarkable, Wei murmured, studying the readouts. Your brainwave patterns synchronize when you make physical contact. I've never seen anything like it in cross-species interaction. Hawthorne stood nearby, arms crossed. Can it be replicated with tissue samples alone? No, Theron answered before Wei could. The energy transfer requires living cellular communication. Dead tissue would be useless. Nora caught his eye across the room. He'd been insistent that they maintain the pretense of scientific cooperation while secretly conducting their own tests. What exactly those tests were, he hadn't fully explained, but Nora found herself trusting him more than she trusted Earth Central's approaching specialists.